August burns red. Except for this August, it's actually not that hot outside. That's my dad joke of the day. It is. It is me, HeyArcher. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you're new here, welcome. If you are a veteran here, welcome back. Regardless of who you are, new, old, young, old, I'm not sure, whatever. Make sure you hit that bell down below, get notified when new videos come out, and hit the like button if you like this video. And the comment below, of course, your thoughts on the video, because it helps me come up with new content to make. And as per usual, in every video, I will keep adjusting the mic, because it's what you do on YouTube. You just adjust the mic. You do it in comedy. You do it in all sorts of things. You're always adjusting the mic. Anyway, welcome back to my channel, everybody. And this is HeyArcher episode. I probably should have prepared for this. I kind of came into this cold, to be completely honest with you. The week has flown by, and there have been a lot of exciting things that have happened. So, yeah. This is episode 1. I'm going to say 87. I'm going to take a guess here. I was correct. 187. Look at that. Episode 187 of the HeyArcher show. One thing I'm curious about, I'd like to know and hear from you guys. If you enjoyed what I did last week, where I had recorded an episode and then I took one of the sections from it, released it on its own. And then that way, if you like that section, maybe you watch that section on its own, you watch the whole episode or whatnot. So let me know if you like that concept. I'll keep that rolling. One of my fans here, and I say fans just because I couldn't think of any other word to say it, but one of my buddies, I guess I'll leave your name out for now, unless you want me to use your name, in one of my 2-minute reviews, had mentioned that for a series, he'd actually prefer to have 2-minute reviews per episode as opposed to an entire series. And I think that's actually a fantastic idea, because you're correct. You can't talk an entire series in a matter of 2 minutes. I mean, aside from just saying it's good. So I think that's something that going forward, it might change if there's a series that we're watching together. And speaking of which, just as an update here, Carl Urban had posted that they're halfway through season 2 of The Boys, so that is super exciting. No pun intended on that one. But lots of cool things that happened this week. I will do a little throwback here and give a pick of the week as far as music goes. And holy crap, was I excited when this came out. If you are a metal fan or rock fan, you might be familiar with My Chemical Romance. They actually came out. They were popular around the same time. But Killswitch Engage. Killswitch Engage came out, metal band, and they had a singer, Jesse, who was the lead singer of the band. He eventually left, and then Howard Jones took over as lead singer of the band. And what was fun about that, this was probably like 2006 in that range. What was fun about that era of metal, right, is you had almost like the love metal, they were calling it, because you'd have Killswitch Engage on tour with My Chemical Romance and The Used, and it would just be weird because you just have like this hardcore metal band with this emo band or emo bands, and they're all speaking about love, but like with different, melodies and all that kind of stuff. So you had this friendly divide between the old school Killswitch fans who liked Jesse, the new ones who liked Howard. Eventually Howard left, Jesse came back, and they released a song called Signal Fire, or The Signal Fire, that has both of them in it, so, all these years later, it was just cool to see them both together in a song, because that's not something that many bands could say they've done, where they've switched out singers and then the singers are still alive to even do a song together. So I'll put that link below. Check out The Signal Fire. If you're a Killswitch fan, if you're just curious as to what metal sounds like these days, give it a look. So another another thing I just wanted to kind of like joke upon here before I dive into nerd news is so everybody knows about, luxury products, right? Like you buy Gucci headbands or a Supreme hat or something, and you pay like an exorbitant cost for it. But I guess it's just that's something that like I'd see but not really pay attention to that much. And then this week I saw somebody wearing a sneaker, and I actually thought it was a Chuck Taylor, or sorry, I thought it was of the Converse brand, not Chuck Taylor, but I saw it and I was like, oh man, that sneaker's actually pretty dope. And looked closer and realized that it was a Louis Vuitton sneaker. And if you follow sneaker trends these days, which I don't follow too closely, there's a couple channels I like will watch here and there, but the trends these days is that the sneaker boot is what's in. And I myself have become a fan of the sneaker boot thanks to Converse. And so I've also become a fan of Jordan 1s because, in my own opinion, Spiderman Into the Spider-Verse made Jordan 1s cool again. Even though there's always this whole retro look that happens with things where things are old, they come back, etc. But I bought my first pair of Jordan 1s at the age of, 33. Now I'm 34, but at the age of 33, and I love them. So, little by little, my plan is to have a Jordan 1 collection because I love them. But I will always be at heart a Converse fan. So when I saw these sneakers that this guy was wearing, I thought, yeah, those look like Converse, but it kind of looks like it might be a mix of a Jordan 1 and a Converse because it's similar to my Converse ERXs, which I'll put a picture here. Maybe I'll do a picture of the Converse ERX and the Jordan 1s. Ooh, we'll see. Turns out they were actually Louis Vuitton sneaker boots. And after extensive research to find these boots, I found them on the Louis Vuitton site. Now, upon first glance, yes, it looks like to me a Jordan 1. But I like the whole like strap at the top of the tongue, which is pretty dope. But I was like, hey, I'm curious, what would a pair of Louis Vuitton sneaker boots go for? $1,600. This pair of sneakers cost $1,600. I didn't know sneakers cost that much money. Even if it was a designer brand, in my head, I had no clue somebody would spend $1,600 on a pair of sneakers. And what's baffling to me is that you're gonna wear these. Like I could look. Let's look again at the Chuck Taylors, right? The Chuck Taylor, the ERXs, my personal favorite because they have a retro look. There's some flair to them. Are kind of let me backtrack. What's cool about the sneaker boot is that it's a little bit confusing. And if you're wearing like a pair of like, and I apologize, we're going into some apparel stuff here. If you're wearing like some like tapered jeans or like slim fit jeans or something, and you have on like a basketball sneaker, boot style, above the ankle, it's cool. It's a nice contrast of the big shoe with the slim fit pants or whatever. So the boot cut sneaker to me is a pretty cool fashion trend that's going on now. The ERXs to me, super retro look. It looks like something that you pulled out of like 1990s, which I love. Jordan 1s, of course, pulled out of 1990s. So it's a similar look to this Louis Vuitton shoe or sneaker. But you're telling me for that exact look, $1,600 is what it costs to buy a pair of freaking sneakers to wear outside? It blows my mind. Blows my mind. That's like 4 car payments, unless you're a baller and that's like one of your lease payments. Either way, I think your friends who see you buy that should probably not be your friends because they are not your friends if they're letting you buy that sneaker. $1,600. I had no clue. I had no clue you could spend that much money on sneakers, despite the name brand. But whatever, man. If you can do that and that does no dent to your wallet, you do you. But it's a shame if you're like, you're sitting there and you're like, man, like I want to look fly tomorrow or look fly for like some event. I'm going to buy a $1,600 sneaker. You gotta check your priorities, my friend. So, speaking of Spider-Man and Jordan 1s, now we can get into the fun stuff. There was a disturbance in the Force, as we like to say in the Star Wars world. And Sony and Marvel did not come to an agreement on what to do with Spider-Man. And as all things, just like with the Louis Vuitton boot, it comes down to money. And I am divided on whose side to take here. So let me briefly just pull up an article as to what the percentages were that each party wanted. So and this is according to Forbes on their website, when Marvel Studios entered the picture in a deal that had Marvel essentially making the films, while Sony signed the checks and pocketed the box office, minus payment to Marvel working on the film, reportedly at a cost of 5% of Sony's share of the box office receipts. In exchange, Marvel was allowed to use Spider-Man in team-up films, including Captain America: Civil War, Avengers: Infinity War, and the Avengers: Endgame, while Sony's solo Spidey movies had supporting appearances by Tony Stark, aka Iron Man, and Nick Fury. So, in the original deal, as was reportedly, Sony was signing the checks, pocketing the box office, minus payment to Marvel for working on the film, at a cost of about 5% of Sony's shared box office receipts. So, I'm no financial genius, of course, but after reading that a couple times, watching various videos on that by people who are smarter than I am, what that's saying essentially is, Marvel essentially would make the movies, right? And Sony would write the checks to produce the movies, and then Sony would pay Marvel a fee of 5% for producing the movie, in exchange for letting Spider-Man be in the greater Marvel Cinematic Universe. Since then, right, Marvel and Disney have blown up, and Endgame was the greatest grossing movie of all time, worldwide, which is important to note. So when Marvel goes, it's time for us to negotiate, and Sony's like, let's do so, that's where it's hard for Sony to be like, you know what? You helped us make him popular again, and we got a good amount of coin for, or you made a good amount of coin for having him in your series of movies. Maybe we should keep the plan as is, and still not give you a whole lot because you need us more than we need you. And the rumor is that Marvel was saying we need to split this half and half. I probably should have let off with that. And Sony's like, nah, we're good. Keep things as is, or we'll come up with something different. So I'm kind of on the side of Sony here, because this is where you can just be kind of greedy with it and say, yeah, like you borrowed our character. You made a lot of money by having him there. Yeah, whenever you need him, just borrow him. If you want to keep making movies, we'll keep cutting the checks. But most of that money, that's coming to us if it's a solo film, for sure. And I'm not mad at them for that. Because Disney's already as powerful as it is. And Spider-Man and his rogues gallery is one of the few things you can hold on to say, hey, I got some power still in this war that's happening between Disney Studios and everybody. Because right now it's Disney versus everybody, since they're buying everything up. The other part that was interesting about this whole thing was that Marvel still makes money on his likenesses, toys, and all that stuff, with the exception of the video game, which Sony just bought Insomniac, which made the last Spider-Man game. So they bought that before all this even happened recently, which is interesting because it's like, all right, it's almost like they're preparing, like, hey, Spider-Man's like popularity, it's peaking again. It's time to really cash in on this. I'm not mad at them. Not mad at them at all for it. So, you know, if I'm Marvel, then yeah, you know, we're the evil empire, we're the evil mouse empire, and we put a lot of work into these films, and we want to make more money for putting work into the films. But at the same time, you can have your solo Spider-Man film, and we'll keep using him as cameos, and still make tons of money on it, because it's still, by having him in the Avengers, it's still going to help us when we make the TV shows, because Marvel owns that. It's going to help us when we release the toys. Marvel owns licenses to that. So if I was them, you know what's creepy? I didn't even type in Converse yet, and the ERXs are showing up in my advertisements on this computer, which is insane. I've never typed that on this computer. Anyway, yeah, if I was Marvel, I'd be like, you know what? Fuck it. You guys keep cutting the checks. We'll keep writing the movies, and by him being in these blockbusters, we'll keep on making the money on all the other stuff. Because whenever a major superhero movie comes out, comic book sales do a little increase, toy sales do a little increase. You know, everything. It's a domino effect. So if I'm Disney, it's not worth losing him for that, in my opinion. And if Sony wants to be greedy about it, just let him. It's one character. If I can borrow him and borrow everybody else, if I can borrow Venom into a movie, if you can borrow, you know, Black Cat, Doc Ock, the Goblin, if you could borrow those characters and bring them over into some movies, like especially when you start launching a Fantastic Four, because now, don't forget, Disney owns Fox stuff. So Fantastic Four, X-Men. I mean, I feel like it's worth it. Just let that one character go and keep things going. So I'm not mad at Sony. I might be one of the only ones online, and maybe there's a part I'm not understanding here, but I'm not mad at Sony for this. I say you hold strong. Spider-Man's popping again because of the Marvel movies. Ride that. Just ride it. Somehow get that Venom movie redone somehow. A soft reboot. Get that Rogues Gallery in there. You already introduced Vulture. We know that Scorpion is floating around in there. Start pushing that Insidious. What is it? The Insidious 6? Is that the group? I always forget. The Morbius movie's coming out, which you still haven't seen anything about. So if I'm Sony, yeah, hold out. Thanks Disney. You got us popular again. Now we're gonna start rolling out these movies. Question is, what happens going forward with the Avengers movies now that Spider-Man's not in it? And in my opinion, I think they'll be just fine. You know, it's going to be a good amount of years before we have another quote-unquote Avengers movie, like a team-up movie. At that point, they already did the Civil War arc, so you don't need Spider-Man there. If you do Civil War 2, it's not going to be anything like the comic books because that was not a very well-received story, and the Spider-Man in that one was actually Miles Morales. So, being that it wasn't well-received, even though Spider-Man was a big part of it, I think they're going to skip that too. So I don't think Disney really loses out in the cinematic universe by not having him, because like I said, you still have the cartoons, just as they usually do. They're gonna reboot their cartoons like 50 times just to launch a new toy line. So I think they'll be just fine. But that's my opinion on it. Let me know if you agree, if you disagree. I mean, if you really think that you need him in an Avengers movie now that Tony's out and now that Captain America's out, I mean, comment below on that, but I don't think you need him anymore in that. I think we'll be just fine. UFC stuff. I'm gonna skip it for now. On this episode of HeyArcher 187, I'm gonna skip the UFC stuff for now because I feel like it's getting too redundant. And one of my favorite shows, the Show Stomper, features 3 MMA journalists I enjoy listening to. One of them being Eugene S. Robinson, of course, Alexei Oleg, and Kid Nate. Kid Nate is quitting MMA journalism altogether allegedly, because he's just tired of it and it doesn't interest him anymore. And I'm starting to become the same in a different way, but that'll be covered in a different video. But in the MMA world, there has been a lot of interesting videos and posts and stuff being made about our good friend Brendan Schaub. And if you don't know who Brendan Schaub is, I've referenced him before, but he is a former UFC heavyweight fighter. He was on The Ultimate Fighter. He started a podcast with Brian Callen, the fighter and the kid. From there, he started the Big Brown Breakdown, where he would break down fights before they happened. And, you know, by being friends with Joe Rogan and Brian Callen, fell into comedy, and the snowball went on. Now Brendan Schaub is popping. Brendan Schaub is a big name in the podcast world as far as the male demographic, 18 to 35 or 18 to 40, who love Joe Rogan and who love mixed martial arts. So what's been interesting is there's been a huge backlash towards Brendan Schaub lately. And reason being is essentially people calling him a fake. And I have to admit, I've been watching tons of videos on this, and in its own messed up way, I find them very entertaining. And that's one of the things that bothers me about culture these days, is that us watching videos where it's almost like you're defaming somebody or attempting to, what's that word I'm looking for? Attempting to expose them is entertaining. But I listened to a freaking 45-minute video essay on this thing. So that's when I really started thinking. I said, okay, what is happening in this exposure of Brendan Schaub? What is the end goal here? And what I love about it is that in me doing this research, I found that by people hating Brendan Schaub, all they're doing is supporting Brendan Schaub, which is hilarious. And it's one of the things that's so funny about our internet culture these days. Like, there's other YouTubers I watch who, when you go to their videos, it's just utter hatred. Like, people are just commenting that they're racist, that they're sexist, and all these other things. And they're talking about video games, or they're talking about Star Wars. In this case, people are saying how Brendan Schaub is not funny. Oh, sorry. They're talking about how Brendan Schaub is not funny, how Brendan Schaub's comedy special is terrible, how Brendan Schaub's fight predictions are terrible, how Joe Rogan made him who he is. He's saying all these things. And then when I look at the views on his videos, and don't get this part confused, on some of them, there's a lot of dislikes on these videos. He's getting a lot of dislikes on videos with 500,000 views, 200,000 views, 260,000 views, 300,000. People are, unless there's a bot that's generating YouTube accounts to watch his videos, people are watching a lot of his videos and a lot of his content. The Food Truck Diaries. They're watching the new show that he started with Luke Thomas, where it's just the two of them. He's getting a lot of views on this stuff, and most of them are from people who hate him. I think it's genius. I think this entire thing is hilarious, and it's genius. And yes, do I think that some of his fight predictions are wrong? Yeah, all the time. And he'll say some things, and I'm just like, I don't know what the win-loss ratio is there. And any MMA journalist, I mean, Luke Thomas will tell you that he probably has a losing record as far as him doing picks. Nobody can predict the future like that. You don't know what a fighter has going wrong going into a fight. You know, that's irrelevant. But people, one of the other things I saw was people bashing him for his MMA journalism, when he's the first person to tell you he's not an MMA journalist. He's just like me. He's like you, maybe like you. I don't know who's watching this, but he's just a dude that likes talking about comedy and mixed martial arts. So when you go on his video just to bash him, good, keep doing it, because he'll keep making content. It's great for him. I'm happy for the guy. Now he went from, who knows, making 10 and 10 to fight to now driving in, Porsches and buying. He probably has $1,600 Louis Vuitton sneakers, for all I know. Probably doesn't do a dent to his wallet at this point. But I think it's hilarious. I think the hate against Brendan Schaub is hilarious. And if I was Brendan Schaub's team, I'd be like, let it keep going. Let it keep going. Because hate and people making hour-long videos to bash you is its own form of flattery. Own form of flattery. I will have one complaint, though, Mr. Schaub. And that is maybe not your fault. Maybe it's Joe Rogan's fault or whatever. The last video that came out, like, really bashing Schaub was by, I think it's Beige Media. Let me see. Beige Frequency. So Beige Frequency had made a video, like I said, it was like an hour long. I loved it. I thought it was entertaining, about Brendan Schaub. And it got taken down. And allegedly it was because of Joe Rogan's group, his media group. And that's because they hit him with a copyright strike. Originally, he was hit with a copyright strike from Showtime for using, I think, some below the belt or maybe like boxing clips. But it turned out that it was Joe Rogan's group who got it flagged and pulled from YouTube. So where I'm on the side of Beige Frequency and like some others is that Joe Rogan always talks about, free speech, how stupid it is that YouTube has copyright strikes for content, especially if you're like watching something or whatnot. So if there's one piece of advice I can give Brendan Schaub is somehow let that strike up, because if people see this video or that video and they have hate against you, right? For one, it'll bring eyes to your channel, which we can always use more eyes to our channels. But two, imagine if you're the one who actually said, hey, you guys are trashing me and you're saying that my entire comedy career is fake. All right, bet. Lift the flag. Everybody watch that video and then watch my comedy and see if it's true or not. I'd say let it go. If I was you, Schaub, and your team, let it go. Because proving them wrong, you can't go wrong with that. Also, no pun intended on that. But I think it's hilarious. I think the whole thing's hilarious. I think the hate against Brendan Schaub doesn't make sense to me. I love watching videos where people make, video essays on whoever, but this whole thing against Schaub is hilarious. And watching the videos is hilarious. And the more you watch the videos, the more you go to the channel, the more you go to his YouTube page, his Instagram, his Twitter, and people take time out of the day to write hateful stuff to him, and it gives him more views. And just keeps on putting those coins, putting all that stuff in his pocket. So to you, Mr. Schaub, I say kudos. I say you lift that flag. And I say you ride that hate train all the way to the bank. All the way to the bank. But that's my opinion. Comment below what you think about that. I didn't even take a drink for that. Comment below what you think about that. If you even knew that this was a whole thing about like the MMA fan base against Brendan Schaub. Let me know if you even care about that down below. Like if you actually truly do not care about Brendan Schaub, I want to hear about it down below. But if you're a fan of Below the Belt and all those other podcasts and stuff, I also want to hear you drop a like down there and leave a comment, because I'd be interested to hear what you think as a fan who's not in my head. Whatever. But that's all I got, I think, for today. We did Spiderman. We did the Louis Vuitton boot briefly. We did Kill Switch. We did Brendan Schaub. I think that's a pretty good episode, if you ask me. But I want to hear from you guys. What kind of topics do you want to hear? Do you want me to actually do sneaker reviews or talk about sneakers? Or talk about other things I think are silly, like spending maybe $2,000 on a hat because it says Supreme on it? Let me know below. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more awesome reviews, more 2-minute reviews, more MMA breakdowns, as long as you still like watching MMA. And I will see you guys. Oh, don't forget, talk to me about Spider-Man too. Right down below what you think about the Spider-Man stuff. But I'll see you guys later.